Hey everybody. I want to take a little bit of time today to show how I actually work on issues. And I think this is really important because when we work on issues from GitHub, I do the same thing every time. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and take this issue that just came up yesterday on the open source repo from Ben B. Johnson for LiteStream. I do work on this project and we get a lot of issues in. And most of the time, I have no idea what the problem is, right? So I'm reading this issue here, and the issue today is that it's unable to restore from Azure on different machines. Okay, well, I don't use Azure, so that's always going to be an issue right away. And so what do I usually do when I get an issue? The first thing I'm going to do in real life is I'm going to go out, I'm going to look at the issue. I'm going to search for past issues to see if we already have issue for this. Is it a duplicate issue? Things we have to figure out right away. Is this a new feature request? Is this a bug request? Obviously, in this one, it's a bug just by reading it. But I do the same thing, I go through the same process every single time. And for me, I get tired of doing that, and it's a lot of extra work. And with AI today, we can speed that up significantly via a skill. I've got the Gopher Guides, Gopher AI repo that I have out here, and there's a whole bunch of skills. And the one I'm going to use specifically today is going to be the start issue skill. And this skill actually understands how I work on issues. It's going to go through a whole bunch of different things. It's going to ask me, first of all, do I want to set up a work tree? And I do a lot of work trees now with AI because I want to work on issues specifically for AI. This is an important distinction for work trees, is that I want to be able to actually have it do the research on a work tree. And for me, this is a distinction from just coding itself, because I can have 2 or 3 work trees open that can pull down specific sets of code that's already in process, maybe a PR that's already been put up, and do the research and figure out, is this a good PR? Or give me information on what I need to understand about this code before I even start going in and making changes or reviewing that code. So again, first thing we do is we go ahead and we create a work tree. That's part of this. And then we have a detect issue type. The detect issue type is going to figure out, hey, is this a bug? Is this a feature? Something simple, but something we do as well. And then I actually have different workflows depending on if it's a bug fix or if it's an actual new feature. Things like if it's a bug, I might do test-driven development to actually implement the fix. Much different. Again, I'm going to have AI do the actual work the same way that I would as a person do the work. And why do I do that? Because I know that process works, right? I've been writing code for 30 plus years, and I know that when I have a bug, the first thing I want to do is write a test that fails that can reproduce that bug. That way, when I fix it, I know it actually works, right? Feature workflow is going to do a little bit different. First, it's going to try to understand all the requirements, right? What's the acceptance criteria? What are the user expectations? What are the technical constraints? All the things that I would have to research on my own and go out and figure all of these things out again. Once we've figured that out, we're going to create some base branches even in that work tree. And then we're going to go ahead and define the completion criteria, right? So let's go ahead and see this in action. So here we go. This is the issue right here. Again, I don't really know what it's going to do. I'm going to say start issue right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it the issue number, which is 16. And I've got it in plan mode. Now, why do I have it in plan mode? Because it's going to think a lot harder, and it's going to actually create a plan locally, which a lot of you know this already if you're using Claude every day. It's always going to use max tokens as when you're in plan mode here and go through things. So here we go. It's going to start to understand this. I'd already understood that it was a bug report. And one of the first things it tries to do at this point is tries to understand, do we have an existing bug specifically for this one, right? So do we have a duplicate bug already? Is there maybe a PR that's in play that's already fixing this? We don't really know, right? Same things that we would do as a human being. And it's just going to take that work out of it. So it's doing that right now. And we'll see what it comes back here in a minute. Again, the skills that I'm using here, these are all free. If you look at the commits that I've got going on in this code here, you will see that almost daily, I am updating the different workflows here. A lot of times it has to do with how Claude has changed their stuff. I recently just updated this just this weekend to actually support also the Codex and the Gemini CLIs. Gemini to a certain extent because they just released their skills. Now, normally I would not be sitting here waiting for this to finish, right? I would actually be on to my next task at this point. At any given point, I've probably got 4 or 5 projects I'm working on. I've got 5 or 10 tasks I'm working on per project. I'm really pushing this to the limit. All right, so it thinks it found the problem on this one. I don't have a high degree of confidence on this one specifically, just based on what I'm seeing here. So we may have to go and actually do some real coding. But again, a lot of times it can one-shot these. This one, I'm not so sure. So let's go ahead and figure out if this is truly the error here. It's telling me it's actually found an iterator error that is pretty much prolific throughout the entire system, which I'm not really going to buy that. But hey, let's go ahead and see what it does. We never know. Sometimes I'm surprised. But again, we have a lot of tests in this repo as well. So if it breaks things, that's fine. And again, we're on a branch. So if we want to throw it away when we're done, that's okay too. But let's see what it can come up with and determine if this gets the code corrected or not. Looks like it came back and it has a plan. So let's see what it thinks the actual problem is here. All right. So it's saying that when it's restoring the LiteStream backup from the Azure Blob Storage using Azure CLI authentication on a different machine than the source, the user is seeing no matching backup files available. Of course, this is not very helpful, and it's likely the underlying error somewhere is causing the issue. So it actually thinks that we're just not getting an error back. So I'm going to probably call no-go on this one. I don't believe this, but maybe it is. I don't see it creating a test for this anywhere in its plan. So that's the one thing that's a little disturbing. I would have expected to see that. Without a test, I'm not really sure we're going to be able to verify this. So that's where I'm going to go ahead and tell it, hey, I don't see a test. I don't see us creating a test to actually replicate this issue prior to us fixing it. Okay, well then let's use, so it's not only that's really hard to test, I get that, but we have Docker available. So let's use Docker to try to create a set of tests that will replicate this. I'm not interested in code changes unless I know what the problem is for sure. All right. So again, this is where you have to push back on AI quite a bit. This is actually kind of a really good one to see the first time because we're already finding very quickly that it completely got the approach wrong. I really want AI to mimic me as a person and as a senior developer, and that's where it gets it wrong quite often. So let's see what we came up with here. Is it going to actually try to run tests? If not, I'm just going to quash this and actually have to do this manually because if it's not going to run tests, there's no point. All right, so here we go. It's going to actually start this up in its own storage container there and start to try to run these. So at this point, let's see what it can do. Now, this is recently a new addition here. You see where it says clear context and bypass permissions versus just manually approve edits or bypass permissions. This used to be the one that I used to pick all the time. Yes, just bypass permissions. But this is actually pretty nice now, declaring the context. What that's going to do is, I don't know, you can't see it right now. I really wish it would show you what your context was at. A lot of times just by doing this research, your context is eaten up pretty heavily. And if you don't clear your context, it's still going to be eaten up pretty heavily as well. And that's going to make it harder for it to do its job. So by clearing the context, it's only going to have this plan right here that it created, which is going to be exactly what we're going to work on. So when it restarts, it'll read this plan and then it will begin work. So I'm going to actually clear the context and let it try to go to work. And let's see what happens here. You're noticing I'm running in bypass permissions mode. I do this quite often locally. I think I've only had it really once or twice doing truly destructive where it's completely done like a hard push on main or something like that, hard reset, and I've lost changes. But I've been using Claude for 6+ months in bypass permissions YOLO mode, and only once or twice. Now I've since put some safeguards into my Claude MD, things of that nature, so that anytime it's supposed to do anything destructive, it actually has to ask me before it does that. Even though I've got permissions bypassed, the Claude.md knows not to do anything destructive without asking me. Now, while I don't truly think this is the error that's being caused, what I'm seeing here is it's actually catching a pretty good fix, though, is that we weren't checking the iterator errors, and that's a good thing. So we should have been checking those regardless and returning those back. And if anything, what it might do is help us diagnose the issue. I don't think it's going to actually tell us what the issue was in this specific case. But as we all know, sometimes when we're writing code, this is less about us figuring out what the bug is sometimes and giving us information to debug the issue. And so many times on these issues, we'll go back to the original bug filer and say, hey, we don't know what the problem is yet, but we've added additional diagnostics. Can you run this again and let us know what's going on? All right, so it's done building. It's going to run all the tests at this point, which again is part of the skill. All right, so I created the commit in the new work tree, which is great. And so now I don't want to push and create the PR yet. I'm nowhere near that. I now want you to use Docker and see if you can replicate the problem. All right, so reuse Docker, try to replicate this problem here. It might take a little bit, so we will let it continue. What's really nice about this too is this project actually has enough knowledge through the AI files in here to actually write pretty good testing. It's going to go ahead and fire up these Docker containers. It's going to fire up my SQLite, and it's going to write a bunch of data to it as well. And then it's going to make sure it's replicating, taking the snapshots, pushing up the files like it's supposed to up to the Docker containers. And then it's going to create new Docker containers or new spaces and then try to replicate or restore that data back over there, effectively trying to figure out why the user is getting into this situation as well. And of course, it's going to figure out how to use Azure at this point. So it's going to figure that out as well. All right, looks like we had a successful backup here. So now we're going to try to restore. All right, so I think really what's going to end up here is that this fix is really more about getting more diagnostic information. So I still have no idea why this person's having a problem. It might literally be a config issue on their end. Many times it is. If you work with cloud storage, configurations can be quite daunting. Hopefully with this information here, we can go ahead and create this diagnostic and help them out. So it's going to go ahead and create the PR, but I want to tell it to push and create the PR, but be specific that this isn't really a fix yet, more about diagnostic information so that we can continue to work on the fix. And I don't worry about my typos, so it's going to go ahead and create that. And what's nice about having this work tree too is when I come back to this issue, it might take a day or two for this person to get back to us and tell us, okay, here's my logs or here's what I found out. With this work tree here, I can just leave it in that current state on my computer and come back to and jump right into here. So now as a human being, I don't trust AI ever. I have to come through, I'm gonna have to read this entire PR over, make sure it actually makes sense. And then I'm gonna have to look at the code changes. Now, I think the code changes are pretty straightforward on these. If I'm looking at these, I'm just literally before we were never checking the iterator errors, which I'm really surprised that this wasn't caught before then. Obviously, if we have iterator errors, we really should be checking them, right? So I think that's all that did at this point. And so hopefully, if that is where the error is occurring, we will actually find out what happened at this point for these commands and go ahead and get better information back. So again, I don't have a high confidence that this is actually the problem, but this is still a really good fix regardless, right? We clearly weren't checking an error like we were supposed to. So I did service that. And I think the next piece will be something that we can try to diagnose. Thanks for watching this video. Hopefully we learned a few things about skills today and how I like to approach this type of work. I will be recording more videos as well. So if you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see more of this in the future.